Hello, I'm Abdillahi Hassan and this is Unscripted at CBA. Today I am very delighted to bring with you this show, and it's about a very important person. In our long history in Somaliland, we have many unsung heroes, people who have contributed tremendously to the welfare and well-being of the society, but that it seems with the generations passing that we are almost forgetting about them. Today we are talking about such a man. He was one of the earliest people who have diagnosed one of the diseases of the Somali society. That's tribalism and how it divides the people of Somaliland. He is Said Ahmed Al Muse, and with me is his daughter, Maryam Ahmed Al Muse. Maryam, welcome to the show and CBA.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ahmed. I'm delighted and pleased to be with you.
We will look to the biography and the contributions of your father in the show. But first, can you give me snippets or an overview of the most important contributions that he has done to Somaliland?
My father, I would say, was a legend in the history of Somaliland. He was a freedom fighter for long. He was the first to start the relationship with Egypt and some of the Arab countries as well. He fought this tribal system for years and years. His struggle for freedom was behind the independence of 1960. I would say in a nutshell, one word, he was a great person, a real legend.
That's true. So to go back to his early childhood, and when and where was Ahmed Al Muse born?
He was born in 1916 in the village of Hahi. His father, my grandfather, Sheikh Musa, was at one point the leader of the Hahi Tariqa, and he was a great person as well. He did a lot of charitable work in Hahi. He was the one who set the foundation of the first mosque in Borao during when Somaliland was a British protectorate. He was politically active, I would say, trying to bring tribes together. My grandfather, Sheikh Musa, married my grandmother, Maryam, Sheikh Adan. Sheikh Adan was the head of the Tariqa in Sheikh. And this intermarriage was a kind of an first attempt trying to end this tribal rivalry and extremism. He received his religious education at the beginning in the village of Hahi, and I visited Hahi recently, a few days back. Great. The weather, it's a peaceful environment. I would love to go and live there.
102 years have passed since your father was born in Hahi.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he may have talked about it with you when you were young. How did you find the place, and the place that you may have imagined when you were young, and the situation you have found it now?
Unfortunately, being the youngest of all my sisters and brothers, I had no chance to learn a lot from my father, because at the age of 10, when I was 10 years old, he fell sick. This was in 1973, early 1974. But I always recall that he had this nostalgia going back to Somaliland, going back to Hahi. He felt it was the place to live in peacefully, and he had this strong feelings towards Hahi.
You told me that your grandmother was the daughter of the
Sheikh Adan,
the leader of the Tariqa in Sheikh.
Yes.
How did this intermarriage of the leaders of the religions of two regions of Somaliland have shaped his life?
My father's life. Well, I would say that he grew up hearing about this tribal system which was affecting Somaliland negatively. So he was, right from the beginning, he was keen to fight this system and to see security and stability and tribes living together in peace. He was very much saddened by the situation.
And then he joined, like, he sought Islamic knowledge and Islamic traditional education, and he received it in Hahid, and he went to Azhar.
Yes.
Was it a family tradition, or it was something that he was driven for it?
No, he was driven for it. He wanted to go to Egypt to join Al-Azhar and to become, to learn more about the religion, and to go back to Somaliland and start guiding people, teaching people, and helping them learn more about the religion, and also learn about the fact that this tribal system is not part of the religion, you know. As a matter of fact, religion, Islam calls for unity, for stability, for living together in peace. He was for that. So for him, going to Egypt was to go to Al-Azhar, join Al-Azhar and learn more about Islam. It was to start paving the way for a strong relationship between Somaliland, even though it was still under a protectorate under the British occupation, especially that the colonial power tried very hard from 1884, I recall, to isolate Somaliland from Egypt. Especially in 1952, Egypt received its independence, and Nasser had played a very important role helping the freedom fighters in almost all of Africa. And my father was one of them, and he was supported greatly by Nasser.
So how did the trip to Al-Azhar come about?
How did it happen? Actually, he was trying to get the permission from the British at this time, and they denied it for years. So he decided just to leave on his own, without a visa, without anything, to Sudan. He went to Sudan, and from Sudan to Egypt. And he actually talked in one of his books about this trip, and how the Egyptians were very welcoming. And they started, considering him as part of them and helping him. And he had great relationship with Nasser, and then with Sadat for a year or two before he fell sick.
And when was that, when the first time he traveled to Egypt?
It was October 1948, I think, yeah.
So just 4 years before Nasser came to power in Egypt?
Yeah, yes, just a short while before. So he joined Al-Azhar, and he started his education, and he became an Azharite, and this helped him a lot when he came back to Somaliland, teaching people, guiding people. And also he started in the Egyptian radio, he started broadcasting a program. It used to be broadcasted every evening at 9 o'clock. I found this out from some of the people that I interviewed lately. And
was it in
Somali?
Sawt al-Arab?
Yes, Sawt al-Arab, in Somali language. And he was trying to encourage people to, wake up, you start fighting for your country, for your freedom, for your independence. And he was trying to show them that the imperialist power was not for helping them, was not there to help them, was there to just continue exploiting them or ruling them, dividing them. This program, some people still remember, they were, gathering in secret places to listen to his speech. And he was such a charismatic leader, very articulate. Very articulate.
And all of this was driven only by him, or were there like organization of Somalis in Egypt that he was part of?
Actually, he led the whole thing. It was driven. I would say it was led by him. It was his initiative. But in Somaliland at the beginning, when they tried to when he established Hezbollah. And Hezbollah, I would like to clarify, this has got nothing to do with Hezbollah in Lebanon. This was established in 1957, so it's way back.
Way back.
Yes, way back. And even he was mentioning in his book that the name Hezbollah just came to his mind when they were planning for the establishment of the Hizb. Himself and a group of religious leaders and the elders in the community, but it was led by him. He was the one who took the brunt of the whole struggle.
So when he was in Azhar, what did he study?
He studied Sharia, and he had actually, he mentioned 2 certificates. One of them is Al-Qanun wa Sharia, as far as I recall. And he was keen to acquire profound knowledge, of the religion, and especially that people in Somaliland were very religious, and even in his books there isn't one page without a verse from the Quran or a hadith from the Prophet. And this was one of the reasons why the party gained tremendous following when it was established. This was one reason. So he thought that acquiring such profound knowledge would pave the way for his struggle for independence.
And how long did he stay in Azhar?
4 years, actually 6 years. 6 years. And then he came back to Somaliland, and he started his struggle. And there isn't one time, I was told by one of the elders I met, whenever he came back to Somaliland, he used to go to one of the mosques, the biggest mosque in Hargeisa, and give the Friday sermon. Teaching people, guiding them, getting to sit with them and advise them. So he was
Islamic scholar, yes, and also a leader, a political leader, yes, of some sort, is leading the fight against the colonial power and seeking the independence of his people.
Yes.
So when did he start officially the Hezbollah, his most known contribution to the independence fight?
It was the first conference they held in June 1957, and I think it was in a place, correct me if I'm mistaken, called Lan Melaho. And it was welcomed by so many people, and it was successful, especially in the Bariga. But of course the colonial power tried very hard right from the beginning to put an end to this party. They tried hard, and one of the reasons why he wrote Hizbullah wa Hizb al-Shaytan, this is the book, it was written in 1960, it was to show people why the party was established in the first place, what the mission and vision of the party, and the people who, the founders of the party. And also he talked a little bit about himself and what he did even before the party was established, because he was at times, the colonial power and their allies, whether, from different, maybe different Somalians who were supporting this kind of a system. He tried to show, what he did right from the beginning.
So he wanted to showcase his contribution before he came back to Somaliland.
Exactly, because he was accused as a spy for the Ethiopians, a spy for the Egyptians, somebody who was trying hard to maintain this system of tribalism. And it was exactly the opposite. So he was in Hezbollah and Hizb al-Shaytan, he was mentioning a few things that he...
And what are the things that he is boasting about? His accomplishment is that he wants to tell people to win their hearts.
You see, he focused very much on religion. And this was one way of attracting people. He was clever in that. One of the reasons he mentioned, one of the reasons for opting to go to Egypt was to go to Al-Azhar, because he knew this would have a positive effect.
Yeah, Somalis used to prefer Al-Azhar.
Yes, and even he started the relationship with Egypt in 1951. He started the trade between Egypt and Somaliland, sending, exporting livestock, and the effect of this was, the prices went up of the Somaliland livestock
because of a new market opening up.
Yes, exactly. It started in 1951, October of 1951, as far as I recall. And it continued then. Even during his stay in Egypt, he used to help students to go and learn in Egypt, join different, mainly Al-Azhar, but some people joined other universities, and he would help them in every sense of the word. I interviewed one person who was one of those students, and he spoke with great respect about his trip and how he used to take care of the students. During the feasts they would gather together, how modest he was, sitting amongst the students and helping them and advising them.
And sitting in Azhar, where he gained the honorary name of Sayyid, the honorary title of Sayyid.
Yeah, I think it was here in Somaliland because my grandfather's name was Musa. So when he became a religious person, they added Sheikh. I think this is a trend in Somaliland, right?
Yes, it is an honorary title,
yes,
indicating like religious,
exactly,
piety, like that.
It was more in Somaliland than in Egypt. But he added Al-Azhari to his name at the end, especially the books he had written, and they were printed and published in
So there's also
Egypt.
other books beside Hezbollah and Hizb al-Shaitan.
Yeah, Hezbollah wa Hizb al-Shaitan is one of them. This is the most important book because there is a lot there. And there's Khatar al-Asabiyya ala Somal, the danger of extremism on Somalia. This is the second book. It was published in 1959, before Hezbollah wa Hizb al-Shaitan. And there's Al-Tarawat al-Da'i'a fi Somal, the lost wealth or resources in Somalia. And interestingly enough, in this book, there was like a chapter on whether the Western powers are there in Somaliland or Somalia to help the country find its resources, or whether they were there paving the way for establishing military bases. And this was very interesting because he's hinting to that in 1959. And this, if it proves anything, it proves his insight and foresight.
One thing that's striking about the relations between Ahmed or Musa and the Egyptians, especially the Nasser regime, is that Ahmed was very religious, and he wanted Somalia to, go religious orientation with its politics and laws, while Nasser was very secular. Wasn't that, Bariga's apparent or visible to the Sayyid?
He differentiated between his going to Egypt to join Al-Azhar and acquire profound knowledge on Islam as a religion, and between meeting with officials, Egyptian officials, and telling them about the situation in the protectorate then, and asking for support. So he separated between both of them. And of course Nasser was supportive of freedom fighters in all of Africa, and this is what
So he was pragmatic, we can say, yes, about seeking support for his people.
Yeah, very much so, and also opening a market in Egypt for to start exporting the livestock to Egypt. So he was very pragmatic in every sense of the word.
So just right before the independence of Somaliland, Hezbollah has diminished in power and other parties have come to the front, and they were the parties who delivered the independence and came to power after that. What did Said Ahmed Musa think about that?
Actually, he was fighting for independence and for freedom, and then he was fighting in the northern part, the British protectorate, and I think it was only 4 months before the Italian part received their independence, and then they joined. For him, the main thing was to abandon tribalism, full stop. For him, abandoning tribalism, and he was also he was always saying, well, tribalism has got its positive aspects and its negative aspects. Let's keep the positive aspects of helping one another, being more responsible towards relatives and helping when they are in need. All these positive aspects, well, let's keep them and maintain them. But the negative aspects, which cause tribes to fight and live in war, constant war, he said, let's abandon these. This is not Islamic in the first place. And second, we need to live in peace, in a peaceful society. We need security. We need to build our country. We need to develop. And for him, development, there was no way to develop unless you establish peace and security in the first place. And he kept, every time he would say the colonial power's interest is to maintain this system because they can remain as long as possible. For him, this was, the main.
So his main target was to get rid of the colonial power and
Yes.
to cement like peace between the clans and tribes of the Somali people.
Yes.
But did he object to the direction that the Somali Republic, after the union between the North and South, has taken? For instance, it has taken like secular direction in governance and everything, and he was from religious background. Did he object to that?
Yes, he objected to this very much. And whenever he came to Somalia in general, then it was Somalia, he would go and give the Friday sermons and talk about the importance of adhering to the principles of Islam and not changing anything whatsoever. And I recall just before falling sick, I think it was in 1973 or 1974, and there was an attempt by the government then to change one main aspect in the religion, which has to do with the inheritance law in the Sharia. The females receive half of what the males receive, and there was this trend of making it equal.
Yeah,
He
the
was,
scientific socialism
yeah.
trend of the time.
Yes, he was against this point blank, and he spoke out loud about it it was a Friday in one of the mosques, the main mosque in Hargeisa, I think, and to the extent, not only him, it was him and other religious leaders and other leaders in the society.
Some of them were executed.
Exactly. I was told that he was taken by some relatives from the mosque and taken to the airport, and they urged him to leave because they thought that after such a strong sermon, there was no way that he would be left alone. And the following day, all the others, 20 odd, I think, were executed. And he was very much saddened by this. He fell sick right after, because he thought, after all this history of fighting for freedom, for independence, for development, for a peaceful society, and then after all this, he couldn't even go and visit his own land.
You tell me that he used to come back to Somaliland. So after the independence, did he move back to Egypt?
After independence, yes, he moved back to Egypt, and he continued with he established the Somali Chamber of Commerce. It was located downtown in Cairo, 16 Champollion Street. And many of the students who were helped by him, they know this address by heart, because they used to come from Somaliland or at the time and go to the office to seek help and advice and whatnot. He used to be he used to be the main person, taking care of all the students coming from Somaliland, helping them with everything in their life as far as possible. For them, one person I interviewed, Mr. Rashid, he told me he was a father to me. So for all those people, he was their father.
So did he hold official posts when at that time when he was helping those students and establishing the Chamber of Commerce, all of that? Was he, acting on official capacity from the Somali Republic?
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure because I know that after some time the relationship between him and the regime deteriorated. So I'm not so sure, especially that I was young then. I don't know.
And he continued to be active in writing, and he was writing profusely in Egyptian newspapers. At the end, you tell me he was very despotic about the execution of those scholars that opposed the regime for, changing the Sharia law.
Yeah.
How long did he stay sick before he succumbed to his injury?
I recall that once he came back after this, just one day before the execution, I recall he started falling sick. He felt very sad about what happened, especially that it was his colleagues and friends executed. He felt very bad about it, and he felt sick. He had a problem, and at the end it was a clot in the brain. For 7 years he was not well at all.
And when did he pass away?
He passed away on the 14th of March, 1980. It was a Friday, after Al-Asr. I was with him when he passed away.
So he meant different things for different people. He was a public figure, he was a leader, freedom fighter, and he was a scholar. What did he mean to you?
This is a good question. He meant everything. He meant everything to me. I was young when he fell sick, so I did not understand, all about this freedom fighting and politics, and I came to learn about all this later, and I found even the books by coincidence. For me, I think I'm very blessed to be his daughter. He meant the whole world to me. He meant my life. It was tough to lose him in 1980. It took me a while to recover. He was such a loving father. As a father, he was such a loving father. He was very passionate, compassionate. He was firm but fair. He was very, very generous, and he was caring for everybody. He was taking care of his family, his neighbors, his community. He was a legend. For me, he was, he's...
What is the most surprising thing that you have learned from him in this trip that you have come to Hargeisa, Somaliland now?
I learned a lot from him. He was very, he was very religious, and he used to tell me, don't think that you are what you are, or the life you're living is because I'm clever or I'm smart. It's because it's God's will. So he used to advise me to be modest. He was very modest, to be caring, to look after the weak, and I learned a lot from him.
So to conclude the show and this very interesting, conversation about this great man that I really personally admire, what do you think would be his legacy and what he can teach the younger generation that are living now? It's my first time in Somaliland. I'm 56 years old.
and I haven't come here before, and it was a great opportunity to go and visit Hahi. I visited Hahi and Borao and Sheikh and Odwaini to see where my father was born, and learn more about, and see my relatives and learn more about his history. Actually, those books were found by coincidence by me. These books are only in Arabic. So we met Mr. Muhammad Hussein, Mr. Muhammad Ali are from my family, they are relatives, and Dr. Ahmed Awali. We met together and we decided to reprint those books, have them translated into English and Somali, and include interviews with people who lived part of their lives with him, like the students, like some others. I met I think the mayor of Borao at one time, and I had a long interview with him. I learned a lot from him, and I'm sorry I forgot some of the names, because I met like maybe 10 people so far, but we decided, because this was going to die, you know, and we decided to revive his legacy by having those books reprinted, translated, and hopefully we can launch this in next year in the Hargeisa International Book Fair, hopefully, if we're finished with it. And I would request from the Minister of Education that you know, such books would be taught to students in schools, because he's one, you know, the mayor of the previous mayor of Borao, you know, when I asked him to just say a statement, you know, about my father, he said the greatest leader, the only leader. You know, many people, especially the elders, know about him, and it would be a pity to have this, you know, gone with the wind. So I'm happy that I will be part of this mission, if I may call it. It will take some time. It's a lot of work, but at the end we could have those books in the libraries, in the cultural centers, and people, youth, can learn a lot from him, because he was really a role model in every sense of the word.
And I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate and would love to have these books in the libraries and to learn from his extraordinary life and leadership and character.
And what attracted my attention, if I may add, is that some of the young people, they know about him. So this made me feel good, you know, and all the respect and love he has in the hearts of, he's gone, but people, you know, respect him and love him. So this is great in and by itself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maryam,
Thank you so much.
us.
It was a pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much.
And you to our viewers, thank you for watching us. Until next time, have a nice time.